الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Center at New York University podcast, coming to you straight from the heart of New York City. We're building an amazing Muslim community here at ICNYU where everyone is welcomed and respected no matter where you're from or where you're at. This is the place to be. So open your ears and your heart and come along with us on another life-changing journey. Bismillah.
Bismillahi walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome. Thank you for coming and thank you for bringing your heart. Today we continue with our growing ourselves spiritually and emotionally. As you can see, the topics that I've been choosing, you're going to find that they are intentionally placed before certain topics, because I'm trying to take you guys on a little bit of a journey here of you need to be connected to certain aspects before we talk about this. And the reason I started out with honesty with self and, inner peace and, turning us inward to these tools that we have within us is because it's really going to play a role in the topic today, which is about letting go of control and acceptance. And there's a relationship here between acceptance and our lack of and our need for control. And so I want to start today by asking a question, and that is control bad? When you think of control, do you think of it as a bad thing? Okay, so is control bad? How many say control is bad? Can I respond? Just raise by, how many people say control is bad? Yes? Who says yes? How many say control is good? How many say it's in between, right? It depends, right? Okay. That's where I'm going with this. That control, a lot of times when it's talked about in a negative context, right? People are trying to relinquish this need they have for control. And for many people, the struggles that they go through in life is very much associated with a need to control. But the opposite is also true. That our healing and our growth and our inner freedom and our groundedness and our inner security also is associated with our ability to cultivate a heart and a mind that lets go of that control. So which control is good though, and which control is helpful, I will say, and which control is unhelpful? So when control goes outward and is directed outward, outside of ourselves and what we have power to change, it becomes unhelpful. When control is turned inward towards what we have the power to change, it becomes very helpful. And that's the key here, right? So when we say letting go of control, we're talking about the control that you have directed outward, controlling other people, controlling circumstances, controlling outcomes, trying to control things that are outside of you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never asked you to have power over or given you power over or asked you to control. And that's where things get tricky in life. And that's where things get heavier. That's where problems get exacerbated. That's where, challenges become harder. Is when we're trying to hang on to these things and try to manipulate and control. And by the way, everybody manipulates. Just some people do it intentionally. But everybody tries to control. And the reason that they are trying to do that is to avoid something. What do you think that people are trying to avoid? Accountability. But oftentimes, because accountability is what? Is painful. So oftentimes what people are trying to avoid is pain, is discomfort. If I can control this situation, then I can avoid conflict. If I can control this situation, then I can avoid any pain. If I can control this situation, then I can avoid rejection. If I can control how somebody perceives me, then I can avoid them not liking me, disapproval, disappointment. And for so many people, control is their go-to mechanism to avoid facing their own pain, to avoid facing the possibility of discomfort, the possibility, the risk. So people are trying to avoid vulnerability, essentially. Because when you are vulnerable, you are cultivating the courage to take the risk of getting hurt. But what you are prioritizing above all of that is what? Truth. You're saying that I am prioritizing truth over the risk of getting hurt. So this is where acceptance comes in. And this is why I started, these halakas first by talking about prioritizing truth and being really honest with ourselves. Because you can't get to a point where you can relinquish your need for control without first understanding the power and importance of truth in your life. And so if you guys, who here was attended the talk on being honest with ourselves and the importance of being truthful? Does anyone remember that topic? Yeah. Okay. So in that topic, I was talking about the opposite of truth is illusion. That falsehood is illusion. You can't really change by attaching to something that's not real. And so many people, when it comes to control, it's not really control. They don't have control. It's the illusion of control. It's the illusion that I actually have power over this thing. I actually have power over this, how somebody thinks. I actually have power over the outcome, over the circumstance, over people's opinion, people's reactions. But do we really have control over these things? Absolutely not, right? So it is an illusion. That's why it goes back to honesty and prioritizing truth, because we got to get real honest with ourselves. What am I really telling myself here that I can control? Because in reality, Allah did not give me that power to control these things. And I'm just lying to myself. It is a lie we tell ourselves. So the reality is you can't control people's hearts. You can't control people's minds. You could do everything right and people will still have an opinion of you. And actually everybody in your life has a different perception of you. And that's something you can't control. That's a product of of their life and their heart and their mind and their belief systems. But what's really empowering about this is that there's so much you actually can control that a lot of times rarely gets our attention, rarely gets the amount of, energy and care and presence, because so many people are living their life by going outward, by trying to control the image that they present to other people, by trying to control, that perfect presentation, that perfect image. And so that perfect lifestyle, people are trying to control that too. If I am so perfect in the way that I put my house or the way that I lay out everything, some people now are, perfectionism manifests itself in different ways in everybody's life, right? And so, but what happens is that the power of doing this work is that you realize, wow, there's so much that actually is in my control that I don't give enough presence to, that I don't give enough attention to, that I don't actually sit with on a daily basis and assess and connect to and say, yeah, that is what is in my power today. And when people actually, that light switch goes on and they realize how much they've been going outward and they start slowly cultivating that muscle of turning inward, that's when things start to get easier. Not that pain ever goes away, right? Not that meaning like pain is something that's a natural part of life, and you're not going to, negate it completely. You're not going to eliminate it completely, but it gets lesser. Because oftentimes it's not the pain of the struggle that is hard to deal with. It's what we add. The pain and struggle can be hard, but what makes it harder is what we add into the process. What we bring into the process, our need to control, our need for things to be perfect. Did Allah ask you to be perfect? So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us power to control? Our nafs, right? The nafs, what does the nafs want? It wants comfort, comfort, comfort. Don't give me pain. Don't give me agitation. And anytime it senses that there might be agitation or discomfort, no, we can't do that. We have to stay away. We have to avoid this. So we have the power, or Allah has given, that's something that is in our control, our own nafs, our own tongues, our own behaviors, how we react, how we interpret experiences, right? We can work on, changing the interpretation we have of certain experiences. And so it becomes helpful when we start directing that control inward. And people say that when they feel like that sense of empowerment. They feel like, I feel like I got control over my life, right? Don't people say that when they feel like they're growing, they're maturing, they're feeling empowered? They say, I got a good sense of control. I got self-control. Discipline, showing up consistently for what is important in your life, that requires control, but it's the inward control, not outward control. And so what is helpful is when we direct it inward and use it effectively with balance, of course, right? And then it becomes unhelpful and often destructive when that control goes outward, and it becomes about controlling others, controlling outcomes, controlling people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to this in the Quran. Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you are not responsible for people's guidance. And here, in this verse, he's speaking to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, right? So I want you to think about this. If the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam is not responsible for the guidance of others, then would Allah hold us responsible? And I know when you think of the word guidance, you're thinking about, it's guidance is guidance to truth, right? So a lot of times, people try so hard to be a certain way so somebody could see the truth of who they are, or that they try to control situations so that no, I need to do it this way and I need to do it that way so that the truth of my goal, the truth of my intentions becomes manifest. But no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you're not responsible for people's guidance. What does that mean? You're not responsible for them seeing truth within you, truth outside of you. You're only responsible for your efforts. So the key here is to attach value to your efforts, your intentions above all. Al-a'malu bin-niyat, right? Innama al-a'malu bin-niyat. Verily, your actions are by your intentions. So first, how do I get back that control? How do I start regaining, using my energy to focus on what is in my power? What is my intention behind this action? What is my intention behind, going to speak to this person, going to do that deed, what are you trying, what are you trying to achieve? Getting really clear on what your niyyah is, what your intention is. So that's where it begins. You're like, okay, so this is what I'm trying to do here. And if it's confusing and you don't know which way to go, you don't know what choice to make, you don't know why you're doing an action, and you find yourself just going on cruise control and you're just like, I don't know why I did this. I don't know what I'm doing. In these moments, before you act, what's really powerful is just practicing stillness. Practicing the pause. This is not the time to be impulsive. This is not the time to just act, okay, I don't know my intention, but forget about it. I'm just going to do it. No, just take a few moments and be still, especially when you have big decisions to make in life. A lot of times when people have big decisions to make, they get really anxious and sometimes they get impulsive and they just act. But these are the moments that there is a lack of inner clarity. So be still. Connect to your heart. What is it that I'm trying to achieve? What am I seeking? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tells us in the Quran that we're not responsible for other people's deeds. And in another verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He gives an example of the people who have passed away, right, before us. And He says, those are a people who have passed away. Theirs is that which they have earned, and yours is which you have earned. And you will not be asked about what they used to do. So Allah does not ask you about how people view you. You're not going to be judged by how another person formed an opinion of you. You're not going to be judged how another person reacted to you. But what's going to give you, peace in those moments is when you know your truth. And when you accept your truth. And this is a really important part here. We talked about getting really honest with ourselves. We talked about not lying to ourselves, just as we wouldn't want to lie to someone else or have them lie to us. But here's the part that a lot of people often miss. It's not enough to know your truth. You have to accept it. But first, let me address a misconception that people have about acceptance that often keeps them from accepting their truth, which is, what do you think I'm going to say? What is a big misconception that people often have about acceptance and and the reason that keeps them away from acceptance? It's usually because they have equated acceptance with compliance, complacency, right? That just, if I accept, I'm never going to change. If I accept something, it means I'm not gonna improve, I'm not gonna grow. And I can't begin to tell you how often that plays out in people's journeys, right? And people will often say if I accept it, that means I'm just being passive. Actually, not accepting your truth is what makes you not do anything about it. You can't control what you don't accept. You can't control what is hidden from you. And actually so many people are driven by underlying emotions and truths that motivate their behavior that they're not connected to, they're not aware of, and they have not accepted it. So what's the difference between awareness and acceptance? Awareness is, I see it, I recognize it, I understand that it's there. Acceptance is, you're basically, how can I say this? You're basically welcoming it, and you're coming to terms with it. You're saying, I'm not happy that this is here and I want to change it, but this is the truth and I'm facing it. I'm settling into it. Because what happens when people don't accept their truth, let's say there's something about you that there's something about your behaviors that you don't like, okay? And you're trying to avoid facing that and having accountability of that and accepting that that's something you need to work on. The second somebody mentions it, what's going to happen to you? I feel like y'all are whispering, and then I'm supposed to hear all of it. What did you say? You deny it? Exactly. What? What are you talking about, right? Your nafs comes up. Whatever you don't accept, you will hate when somebody else brings it up. You're not going to be in a state of peace. You're going to feel that inner chaos. And you're going to spend so much energy trying to do what? It's the word I used earlier. No, that's associated with acceptance. It's in the topic title. You're going to try to control that person's perception of you. So when you don't accept something about yourself and somebody brings it up and says, hey, I noticed this about you. What? No, that's not true. And then you're going to go into that full-blown mode of trying to control their perception of you so that they don't think that way. But in reality, you could have used that energy to be like, well, that is something that is real within me. But what happens when you are accepting of things, even the things that are not so perfect, that are not, we all, everyone has the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Everyone has their flaws. If we didn't have flaws, we would be angels. So to walk this earth pretending we have flaws, pretending we don't have flaws, is an illusion. And then that's one thing. And then to try to control other people's perception of us so they don't see or think we have any flaws is control, right? But what about, let's take that scenario again. Let's say you accepted that you have this flaw. You have this issue, this something you need to work on, something that you feel like, no, I need to change this. And you're at peace with that. You're like, no, this is something, alhamdulillah, Allah has brought it to my awareness. I'm asking Allah to help me with it. I'm working on it, and then somebody else brings it up. You don't always have to admit your flaws to everyone, right? But you won't react the same way. Or you're not going to care and you're going to say, yeah, I do have that. You're right. But it doesn't matter what you really say. It just matters what you feel inside. You're going to feel peace. You're not going to feel the need to control anything. And then you walk away. It's still being about nothing else but your journey. Not, oh my God, what are they going to think? Okay, surprise, I have flaws, And that's the thing. We need more vulnerability. We really do in our homes, in our communities, in our interactions. We need more vulnerability, and I see the lack of it in our Muslim community, where it's almost like once people start practicing, right, there's this need to like maintain that perfect image. But religiosity, or everyone is on their own journey, and you never arrive at perfection. You never arrive at, I'm good with God, right? And if we do have that, it is an illusion, right? That we think that there's this arrival spot, and it takes away from the sweetness of the journey, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always the destination. And if you think you arrived, then what have you made the destination? An illusion, yourself, your ego, not Allah. So this work is so important, because we need to really take that assessment of ourselves and see what it is that, and I want you to think about this today. What is it, about what's going on in your own life, and think about what is something that you have a tendency to try to control. And what is it that you need to let go of? But before you let go, you have to do something else. You have to replace what you're letting go with something greater. And this is a power that Islam gives us. But in order for us to let go of something we've been holding on to for so long, a control, attachments, we have to trust in what we're letting it go to. It's not a coincidence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doesn't just tell us to put our trust in Him. No, He tells us about who He is, so that who you're letting go, who you're letting go of these issues to, right? Who you're letting go control to. You're giving that, you're recognizing His control above yours. You're recognizing His power above yours. And so it's the nature of the human being, and it makes it easier on the path of change when you replace something unhelpful with something positive. And what helps us is when we can put the things that have no longer served us, and we release it into Allah's hands. And we recognize that. And we recognize that we are powerless over those things. Right? That even that word, yeah, I am powerless over this. That's you owning up to truth. That's you accepting truth. You saying, why did I tell myself or let myself believe or lie to myself, and tell myself that I'm powerful over this thing? Powerful over, what I have been trying. Maybe it's a situation you've been trying to fix for so long. Maybe it's, a constant argument you keep having with a spouse on a loop, or struggles in your friendships, struggles within your family. Something you're trying to achieve. You keep putting the effort, and you keep getting, maybe rejected from that thing that you're trying to achieve. Maybe you keep asking for things. You're making dua, knocking, and the door is still closed. So break that situation apart. What is in my control? What is not in my control? even when it comes to your risk, your provision. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us in the Quran? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah, sorry, one second, let me just log back in. So even risk, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not tell us to that is our responsibility. It's our effort isn't our responsibility, but what kind of risk you get, provision, what kind of, how much money you make, whatever, anything, any blessing that you get. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us? At the end of Surah Taha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, we do not ask you to provide. Isn't that interesting? It is we who provide for you. It's interesting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this after He says, bid your people to pray and be diligent in observing it. Here, Allah is differentiating between what is in your power and what is in His power, right? Meaning that what is your responsibility and what Allah did not ask you to be responsible for. The effort. Put in the work. Put in the effort. Show up to what He has called you to. But we do not ask you to provide. And it's interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, we do not ask you, meaning like, did He ask you to provide? Did He ask you to provide for yourself? Didn't. He asked you to show up, put in the effort, seek, right? But what you actually get, that's Allah's the one who's taking care of that. Whether it's you're not trying to get a job, what is in your control? Send out those resumes. Put in the effort, show up to the interviews, right? Do your work, do your research, right? But you know what? Once you've done everything and you walk into that interview, walk in with a trust that it is Allah who controls the heart of that person interviewing you. And if He is the one and if this job is good for you, He will move the heart of the person who's interviewing you. We do not ask you to provide. We provide for you. And this is so empowering because it's not a human being saying this, right? It's not like your friend saying this or even a spouse, but even think about it, right? When like someone is struggling to get their provision, someone says, hey, we don't ask you to provide, we'll provide for you. It'd be like, right? Imagine how someone feels. They feel like, wow, that's relieving, right? But this is not a human being. So imagine then if you can cultivate that trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this only will work if you take this and you think about how it applies into your own unique life. What is it that I'm trying to control? What is it that I'm waiting for? What is it that I'm stressing over? What is it that I am trying so hard? I keep trying and I'm so upset that I'm not getting. And then break it apart. What is in my control? And what do I need to relinquish back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And say, Ya Allah, you are in control. You have power over this. You are the turner of hearts. But what's going to really give you peace at night is when you know you did your best. When you are connected to truth and you showed up sincerely and you did your part. That's what helps people sleep peacefully at night. But what doesn't help people sleep peacefully at night is when they're not focused on their part. They're focused on, well, what if I don't get accepted? What if I don't? What is that person going to say? But when you walk in, and by the way, this scenario I gave you with the interview, it applies to almost everything, right? Do your part and then walk into situations, walk into circumstances, walk into whatever it is that you're anxious about. Take a few moments to remind yourself, Allah is the one in control. He's in control of the outcome. He's in control of people's hearts. He's in control, He's in control, He's in control. But did I do my part? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah An-Nahl, and be patient. And your patience is not but through the assistance of Allah. And grieve not for them and do not distress yourself at what they plan. Sometimes people get so wrapped up, they go online, they read news article after news article after news article, they read post after post, and then they leave and they feel so helpless. And this is happening to a lot of people. I'm going to get to questions and leave. And this happens a lot to people, right? They'll read so much, they'll absorb so much negativity, and then what do they say? I don't know, I feel so helpless, I feel so powerless, What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us in the Quran? Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change doing the work on ourselves. And us changing the condition of ourselves. And so this last part of this ayah, do not distress yourself at what they plan. First, try to, if you know, first of all, I think I've said this before, and I'll say it frequently. I don't believe our minds are designed to absorb that much in a simple minute. And this is what's causing a lot of scatteredness, a lot of confusion about what is in our power, what is not in our power, right? And it's making people like a chicken without a head, right? So, you know, be balanced even in what you absorb. Because just because, you know, you absorb so many things and then you shut off your social media, you leave, you know, you turn off your computer, whatever, you disconnect, it doesn't mean it's not up here. Our brain is a magnificent storage system. It's like files. Okay, this goes in this category, this goes in this category. And it's all there. So you know, I want to encourage you to start thinking about, you know, how you take, like, I want you to start, you know, looking for ways to take your power back and thinking of how you can be present with yourself and what you control on a daily basis. And you could do this just day by day, take it day by day. You could start off by just when you plan your day or when you sit and have just a few moments before you start your day after Fajr. Say, what is in my control today? And then if you find yourself worrying about, you know, oh man, this situation, well, you know what? Let me pray about it and leave it to Allah, and let me go busy myself with what is in my power. It's gonna change your day. It's going to change your life. It actually makes you feel a greater sense of security because you are now not so looking constantly outward for that security. You're showing up for yourself. You're showing up for the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in your life. You're showing up for the reality that is right in front of you. And you're showing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through that showing up and through that gratitude that this matters. Ya Allah, what you put in front of me matters. What you have given me the power to do matters. And that's all we can do. And so I'll stop here and take any questions that you guys have.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you're inspired by the work that we're doing at the IC and want to help keep it going, subscribe to our podcasts, follow us on social media, donate to help support us at icnyu.org, and most importantly, keep us in your continued du'as. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.